What's going on, guys? This is Lior. Welcome back to the channel. If you guys have been following my channel, you know I do two types of projects. I either do complete full gut rehabs, what I call, right? Like a full renovation of a building, or we do projects where we're kind of lightly renovating. I call it the cosmetic flip. So what I thought I would do in this video is go over the differences between these two types of projects and actually talk about the differences from a valuation perspective, from a building maintenance perspective, and of course, from an overall financial perspective. So we're on site at one of my gut rehabs right now. We're gonna go inside and I'm gonna give you guys the scoop on the differences between these two different types of projects. We're on site right now on one of my gut rehab projects, but before I talk about gut rehabs, let's talk about kind of your more typical cosmetic turnaround, right? So you've probably seen me do videos on that before. Basically, that's when you go buy a building and you're gonna just turn around the units cosmetically, right? So that can include anything like kitchen turnovers, right? You're gonna do light kitchen renovations like new cabinets, maybe new countertops, new flooring. Same thing with bathrooms. You're probably gonna like resand floors, paint the walls. Basically, you're just doing very, very light renovations and just turning it over, making the unit look a little better, and then obviously leasing it out. So most people don't really go into very heavy development like gut rehabs or ground up. That's kind of bread and butter for most real estate investors. In this project site, we're what I call a gut rehab. So before I talk about the differences, let's actually define what a gut rehab is. And you can kind of see from the building I'm at right now, right? We are literally gutting the entire building to the studs. So we took whatever was here before, demoed it completely, and are essentially rebuilding everything from inside the frame. So you can see we have brand new framing throughout. Even our subfloors, we actually had to rebuild here because the wood underneath was rotted out. You can see we've got new plumbing going on right now. We've got new HVAC on top, rough electrical as well. So we are literally rebuilding the entire property from inside and out. After all this, rough is finished out too, so you can see obviously the rough is open right now. Once all that plumbing and electrical is done, put brand new walls up, then we're gonna go finish carpentry, everything for the kitchen, everything in the bathrooms. You're gonna have new trim, board. Literally, it's gonna be almost like a brand new building, except the outer shell was really the only thing we kept from the previous state of the building. So you could ask, what are the actual advantages of doing a gut rehab versus maybe what most investors are accustomed to, which is that light turnaround? Well, I'd say there's three key things you need to keep in mind. First of all, there's the valuation component. So the reason we do a gut rehab is not only do we want a rental property and cash flow, right? That's obviously the goal for a lot of investors, but we also create equity by doing that, right? Because when we're doing these big projects, we're usually, when we buy the building for a certain cost, we put in a certain cost in construction money, and then there's usually a spread between that all-in cost versus the final, what I call after repair value of the building. For example, in this particular property, just to give you guys some rough numbers, we bought the building for around $700,000. We're putting about $250,000 worth of construction into here, but the building's gonna be worth about $1.2 million when all said and done. So you can see there's about a $200,000 to $250,000 spread by doing all this construction. So we're actually creating quite a bit of meat on the bone. From a perspective of owning a rental property, the other major advantage of a gut rehab, and the reason I love it, is the long-term maintenance. If you own property, you know that you have, let's be real, bullshit happen all the time, right? You get calls from tenants about leaky plumbing, faulty electrical, broken windows, things wrong with doors or whatever it is, right? And that's just the nature of owning rental property. Things break down. But because we're doing these gut rehabs, when everything is brand new, especially the big stuff, right? Especially the plumbing and the electrical, the roof, the windows, they're all brand new. We don't typically get maintenance calls on these anywhere near the rate that we do on our regular properties, right? These become a lot more maintenance free. There's a lot less things to do once the construction is done and the tenants move in because everything is brand spanking new. The other cool thing about this too is if you think about this from a competitive perspective, our units, the ones that are gut rehab, are always going to be more attractive and stand out when competing against other rental units. So if anything ever happens to the rental market, like in COVID, right? A lot of the rental markets, especially in Boston, they got a little weaker. Our units, when they're fully gut rehab, will always have a premium advantage to the unit next door that wasn't, right? So it'll be a lot easier for us to move these rentals, get them rented out, and obviously at a premium compared to the units next door. Finally, the last major advantage, I kind of talked about this, but because we have so much meat on the bone with these projects, it allows us to deliver better returns for our investors, right? Because if you guys have seen my other videos, you know that I usually have capital partners coming to these projects with me, and these partners want return, right? I mean, they're not bringing money just for fun. They are expecting a certain return on their capital invested. So by creating that equity in this building, not only are we able to provide the investor with cash flow like any other rental property once it's leased out, but because there's so much equity and meat on the bone, it gives us more flexibility. We can do things like cash out refinances, which allow us to pay back the investors earlier than most other projects. Or if we decide to sell the building for whatever reason, there's just a lot more profit at sale than a typical rental property where you might buy it a little bit closer to market value and get cash flows while you're holding on to it. So by doing all this construction, as opposed to just a regular little turnaround, it gives us a lot more options in terms of delivering results, delivering yield to our investors, delivering yield to ourselves, as well as gives us more options on returning capital, which if you're working with other people that are funding your projects is of course going to be one of your major priorities. How do I get my investors' money back to them? So hopefully that makes sense. I wanted to give you guys that scoop about why I like this kind of model versus the other. It's not, again, not to say that I don't do the little turnarounds, because I certainly do, and I still think you can get really good results and really good yields. But this is kind of a different beast of a project where you're taking on a full construction project. But again, there's a lot more upside to it, right? I mean, if you can properly execute, you can deliver really strong results, again, to yourself, to your investors, to your partners, whoever it may be. So hopefully that's helpful, guys. If you guys have any questions about any of this, make sure you comment below, and I will definitely help you out.